Hey guys, hope you are all well. I'm going to be starting a weekly ramble on all things related to email, just expanding, going deep on some thoughts that I have as they come into my head. And hopefully you'll find it useful. If you have any questions that you want me to answer or share your own thoughts, I would love to hear them. Just leave a comment or message me on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you see this. And yeah, I will do my best to expand further on each topic as they come through. So today I want to talk about 5 techniques or email strategies that really need to die. And I wrote an article about this and I want to expand further on each one in this video. Might get around to all 5 of them. Might just go off on a tangent and get a bit deep on a couple. But here I am and let's just get straight into it. So number 1, resends. Sending the same message as a follow-up to someone who didn't open the first email. Now, thankfully, with iOS 15 coming into play relatively soon, you won't be able to leverage this technique. Reason being is because you won't actually know who opened the email and you won't have the accurate metrics if they're using an Apple device. However, resends have always been a big problem, in my opinion, before this, because if somebody didn't open the first email, you shouldn't be sending them the second one. That's a problem with the actual value and content that you're creating, in my opinion. And you want to condition your customers to want to look forward to engage and open your email. So this is the most important thing of why you shouldn't be doing resends. But I hear a lot of people say, oh, but Adam, the resends generated this amount of revenue, and it's often very short-sighted. In my experience with resends, a lot of the attribution that you see coming from the resend would have actually occurred with the first email. It's just because you're sending the resend, it spills over onto that email. And it's not super reliable anyway if you're gauging it just off the revenue for that reason. The second reason to not do resends is that it's going to harm your deliverability. If someone is not engaging with your email, you shouldn't be upping the frequency of sending to them. You should be finding out why they're not engaging with the email. So if you're going to hammer home the same message over and over again, that's going to erode your sender reputation over time and lead to ISPs like Gmail, Outlook to categorize you as a bad sender. What you'll often not notice during these resends until you dig deep into the metrics afterwards is that you're actually significantly increasing the amount of unsubscribers and spam complaints, that you receive. And this is because people get very short-sighted and just focus on the skewed attribution of revenue. So number 1, the content's not resonating with people. Don't send them the same shit over and over again. Number 2, it's eroding your sender reputation. If you start to dig deep into the metrics, you will notice this. And the third one, don't actually have a third one, just thought to try and finish on 3. So they're the main 2 reasons. And well, thirdly, it's not going to be reliable anymore. So you're not going to be able to use them in a couple of months from now. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of not doing resends. I've never liked them. I think thinking that you can bombard and harass someone into taking action is just a terrible customer experience, and you're not looking at the email channel holistically. You should always be consciously focused on whether it enhances the customer experience or detracts from it. And a resend, the exact same content, is definitely detracting from the customer experience. So any short-term uplift you might get from them will be negated by the fact that long-term you're doing significant damage. So yeah, definitely against resends for all those reasons. Second one is sending to your whole list. This is an educational issue for a lot of clients that we've worked with, and if you're an email service provider, you might have noticed the same. And usually it's a case of a client comes on board and they have a list of 100K people, 200K, whatever, million. And they have that mentality where the bigger the better. Because they have more subscribers, they think they can basically just blast the list, right? and get better results. However, we know that this is incredibly damaging to your deliverability again, just like resends over time, because sending to unengaged subscribers is a negative intent signal to people like Gmail, Outlook, that you're a spammer. So you always want to do at least very, very basic high-level segmentation based on whether it's open rates, might be a bit more difficult now. We'll get into that another time. Click rate, active on site, maybe leverage some RFM segmentation if you have the amount of data where you can utilize that. But overall, sending to your whole list is incredibly damaging. So what should you do if you do want to re-engage some of these old subscribers? Because that is a valid concern, right? You've acquired 100K customers over time. Now, fair enough, no one's naive enough to think that everyone's continuously going to buy from you. You can't retain everyone, hence why you need to constantly acquire new customers. However, you definitely still want to re-engage some of these people up to a point where it's not like diminishing returns, where you're destroying, again, your sender reputation. So rather than sending to your whole list, what I would recommend is to periodically, every quarter, you want to use what I call the CEO technique. And I will link to an article in this video that explains what this is, where basically you're leveraging the CEO's position in the company to make a company-wide announcement. And you're going to want to keep this email very plain text. And the reason being is because you essentially want to maximize inbox delivery and keep it really personal to the consumer. When you set up the sending strategy for this, don't just send it to the whole list. You'll want to do it in tiers. So start with like a really highly engaged tier, then gradually move down. So for example, engage with an email over 30 days, engage with an email between 30 to 90 days, and then engage with an email within the last year. Very high level generic example. And then you're going to want to tier how you send to these people. So send to the most engaged segments, maybe 8 a.m. in the morning, the second at 11:30 a.m., and then the third at sort of 4 p.m. time. And theoretically, what this is meant to do is warm the inbox providers up so that you maximize your chance of reaching the consumers. Now, this will definitely bring some of those old unengaged leads back into the engaged segments. So it is a valid technique. However, again, because you're going to get lower engagement on the second and third send, it's not something that you can use every time you send emails, because it will harm your sender reputation. From time to time, periodically, though, you can use this technique. It does work. You just have to need relevant messaging and context behind when you're sending it. Otherwise, the customers quickly become conditioned that it's a bit of a gimmick. And again, there's more negative that can impact you rather than positive to gain from this. So just be careful when you do use it. Third one is using a personal name at the company to send emails. Why is this a bad thing? I send emails from Adam at Marketing Monster, but why should a brand not do this? And also why I shouldn't do it all the time as well. So let me explain why I do it first of all for our company, and also why I'm planning to change it in the near future. I've built like a very strong, I suppose you can say, personal brand where a lot of people associate me with Marketing Monster. That was a bit intentional and unintentional. Obviously, when I started the company, I was just posting massive amounts of content. So I was already automatically associated with the brand. And it's B2B services. I think the dynamics of selling in that environment are quite different than e-commerce. Not to say you shouldn't have front-facing people in e-commerce. It's definitely something that you can utilize, and I think it's very effective. However, this is the negative of using that technique. You become intrinsically tied to the company. It's very hard to remove yourself. So I'm creating a dependency on Adam at Marketing Monster to put forward my messaging. What happens when Adam disappears? If Marketing Monster doesn't have a really strong brand, then that's a big problem, because customers are now conditioned to listening to Adam at Marketing Monster. And it's the same for every other brand. You wouldn't see Nike or Adidas start using like, Jack at Nike, Max at Adidas, Sarah at Glossier. You can't overdo this technique because you become dependent on that person to get the messaging across. And ultimately, that person might not be there forever. So when you do use this technique, you will notice for the first time, you'll get really high open rates, really high engagement. And it can trick you into that false sense of thinking where, well, why don't I just do this all the time? Because when I use a personal name, it gets huge engagement and open rates. The problem is, and I've seen this with tons of accounts I've audited, when you continuously use the founder's name or a personal name in front of the brand, the customer quickly becomes deconditioned to it. So going back to the CEO technique that I mentioned in the second topic of sending to your whole list, customers quickly become conditioned to realizing that you're just using it as a gimmick and it's not actually the CEO or whoever is the front-facing person of the brand speaking to them. So it loses its effectiveness very, very quickly, which is bad because you want to use this technique periodically from time to time to re-engage old subscribers. And when you do actually have something legitimately important worth saying, you want people to resonate with this person and want to hear from them. If you're sending to people every day, then they become deconditioned to the technique. And if you're building a brand that you're planning to sell on in the future, you don't want to have a dependency on one individual person, especially over email, because it's quite an intimate personal channel. And once this person stops emailing them, then the name of the sender can lose effectiveness. So for that reason, I think it's important to keep it generic and related to the brand's name. So I should not necessarily make, again, because of B2B, but let's say I was an e-commerce brand, it should just come from Magnet Monster. And I would say that's true 9 times out of 10, probably more, unless I've got something exceptional that I need to say, in which case it can come from the owner of the company. So that's pretty much it for that topic. Try to keep it on brand. Don't become dependent on personal names. And also remember as well, when someone subscribes to an e-commerce brand, they're not subscribing to Sarah at Glossier, they're subscribing to Glossier. So starting to use this first name or person at the company, they will come to expect this all the time. And again, it's quite hard to take this person away from them. So just be aware of that before you get too involved in that strategy. The fourth one, deceiving customers using misleading headlines. Have you ever heard someone say that the headline is the most important part of sending an email? It's not. It's the name of the sender. That's because trust is built up before these interactions. So tricking someone into opening an email, for example, saying, oh my God, is the subject line. Yeah, you'll get some opens, but try and do it twice or 3 times. I'm not saying you shouldn't use creative headlines. They're very important. It's a hook at the end of the day. But you shouldn't use misleading headlines because, again, you're conditioning your customers to expect a certain type of behavior from you. It's very, very important that the brand acts with integrity and conditions the customers to genuinely want to engage with emails. So yes, headlines are important, but they're not the be-all and end-all. The name of the sender who's sending them is much more important than a headline. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use creative headlines. Of course you should, but you shouldn't trick people and willingly mislead them. That's bad practice. That's a lack of integrity. That's going to damage the brand. The short-term wins of having some vanity metrics of high opens on an email basis, a single email, is going to be counteracted by the fact that long-term, you've just lost the trust of a lot of subscribers. You always want to constantly try and add to the customer experience. Every time you damage it and take away, that's very hard. That leaves a strong imprint on the customer. It's very hard to salvage that reputation if you're a shitty sender. Fifth one, using no reply as your sender name. This shows contempt for the customer. It shows you're not willing to engage with them. It shows you don't want to engage with them. Selling in both a B2B context and direct to consumer for e-commerce brands has just changed massively over the years. Customers want to engage with humans, they want to engage with brands, and they expect to as well, whether that's live chat, over email, over social media. They expect to have two-way conversations and human interactions. If you're not willing to be receptive to that, then that is a huge advantage to your customer. To your competitors. You've got to look at customer service as don't know who I'm stealing this line off, but someone said it probably on my LinkedIn, a profit center rather than a cost center. It's very, very important to be receptive over email to engaging in conversation, and using no reply at brand's name is just a really bad way to turn your customers off and tell them that you're speaking down to them and you're not willing to speak with them. Another issue with using this is that it's not friendly for deliverability. You actually want customers to reply to emails from time to time. You can't look at it as a burden to your customer service, because when you start to generate responses and replies to emails, that's a strong deliverability signal that you're a good sender. The customers want to engage with you. So this is another reason to use a friendly brand name or sender name. For example, hello@magnetmonster.co.uk. I want people to reply to the emails. I want to have the chance to interact with them on a one-to-one basis. I can guide them towards the sales and my objectives, and also help them with theirs as well. You should never shun the customers and turn them away from conversations. It's so critically important to the overall brand, the integrity of your company, how you're trying to come across, and ultimately showing that you're willing to give a superior level of service. So just to recap, I'm going to bring this to a close now. I'm going to try and keep it under 20 minutes. Don't do resends. You're not going to be able to soon anyway, so get out of the habit of doing them now. Don't send to your whole list. If you do want to try and re-engage maximum subscribers, use that CEO technique that I mentioned. Don't abuse your sender name. So don't use like Adam at Magnet Monster all the time. Try to use a brand name and build integrity in the brand itself. Don't become dependent on any individual within the company, because they can move on. Number 4, don't deceive your customers with misleading headlines. Condition them to want to receive your emails. Way more important. Number 5, have a friendly sender name that encourages responses. Email is a two-way communication channel. It's not one way, and it should be like that. Hope that is useful to some of you. If anyone has any questions or thoughts they want to share, please post them below. I'd love to interact with you guys. And yeah, I'll do another one next week and try and continue it for the rest of the year. Thanks for watching, and speak soon.